Hello and welcome back to the Schooner Pod. I'm Bobby Howard. With me today, Ty Lee. And the Oklahoma Sooners suffered their first loss of the season in their opening SEC game, 25-15 at the hands of the Tennessee Volunteers, in a game that it really didn't feel like the score indicated it quite like what it was, but it also, I don't know. This is a bit of a weird one, Ty, and it's interesting because I feel like there were opportunities for Oklahoma to really get in this game and, make it a good ball game. It just never kind of happened. But that being said, I just want to ask you, have your mentions and everything on Twitter been noisy today?
No, they've seemed to have already forgotten or moved on, especially since Mizzou has just been on the attack of everyone for some reason. So no, it's been dry.
That's good. That's good. I think we can all get on with our lives here. But I gotta say with Missouri too, like, why are they on the attack? They just they just survived a Vanderbilt like team that did not look good. I don't want to turn this into a Mizzou conversation.
And then they keep saying like that Tennessee and Oklahoma haven't won a national championship in a long time, but they haven't won one ever. So it's such an odd talking point. But
yeah, like what do they have to do with any of this? Why are they talking? But anyways, Sooners, not a great performance on offense, defensively very good. But I don't know, Ty. So how do we start this thing? What do you?
So I mean, I think what you're kind of trying to say, and a lot of people have said this as well, is that it's not necessarily, or it wasn't necessarily as close as maybe the final score would have indicated, but at the same time, like you're saying, you had the chance to make it close. The defense forced two tremendous turnovers that should have turned into points, right? Like even if we had scored on one that was right down there and then kicked a field goal on the other, then you're looking at a 25-25 score at the end of regulation. Obviously, butterfly effect, a lot of different things would change there. But I think for everyone saying that, Tennessee maybe backed off in the second half or anything like that, which we'll get into that because I think there might be some merit to that. OU had every chance in the world to lead this game at several points and threw it away of our own accord, or maybe of Jackson Arnold's accord, however someone wants to associate blame there. But it certainly was a game where OU could have at least forced Tennessee to throw out all the stops, no pun intended, for the duration of regulation. And, this could have been a 10-point game in the fourth in a much different way if OU had capitalized on some stuff. So it's one of those, it's weird because I kept saying before the game that it's going to be one where you're really going to be able to tell with these teams. And I think with both teams, you actually didn't necessarily get that all that much. So there's a lot of factors to get into there, but it was certainly not what I expected.
It was really interesting because I felt like, if OU wanted to have success in this game, they needed to do a couple things, and they did a couple of those things. They needed to start fast on defense, and they did. They looked really, really good in the first part of the game. Tennessee's offense was not looking spectacular at all. They needed to get to Nico Amialiava, and they did. He had two pretty costly turnovers. And the fans needed to come out hot. And I got to say, a lot of people, chirping about the fourth quarter, whatever. But when this was at its peak, it was one of the best atmospheres I've seen at Owen Field. So the fans, they absolutely brought it. The defense absolutely brought it. The offense was an abject disaster. And it was like comedy of errors, bad offensive performance from OU. A lot of that was that great defensive line of Tennessee's. And you do have to give the Vols credit there. Like, that is as deep of a D line as we'll see ever, really. I'm not saying it's not the best defensive line we've ever seen, at least as far as I know. But it's the best one we've seen since 2018 Alabama. I would be stunned if OU runs up against a better one this season. I legitimately shocked. That was intense. And even though you got Branson Hickman and Troy Everett back, which were kind of helpful, they were still completely outmatched. And Tennessee's defensive line absolutely made a difference in that offense. But Jackson Arnold made some mistakes that were just moronic. And I think that's the thing that's difficult with all of this is entering this game. We could point to the wide receiver room being not really deep. We could point to the line being bad, but it was well, Jackson Arnold making bad mistakes under pressure. There were moments in this game where Jackson Arnold made mistakes completely unpressured. His interception into triple coverage for no reason, just kind of yucking it up there. The fumble on the 5-yard line is one of the most unacceptable things I've ever seen. They had it right there. They had 7 or God forbid 3, and the momentum, if you score that, changes everything. And he blew it. And then of course after the other fumble, that just awful 50-yard screen pass boinking off someone's helmet was also dreadful. And I'm not saying that Tennessee didn't earn this. They absolutely earned this. They were the better team. They were prepared all night. They didn't need to be the Tennessee we saw earlier, where you just blow everyone out by 60 and you kick onsides, in the first quarter up 30. They just needed to be steady and solid, and they were. They were good on defense. We never really got to see their secondary tested much because the defensive line was that damn good. Which, hey, credit to them. Whatever works. That was a damn good defense. But I think without a doubt, Arnold made so many just fatal flaws that, turned this game on its head. And, if you're Tennessee, that's not a dig on the Vols. That's not saying the Volunteers didn't earn it, because they did. But it's one that you got to be happy with it. You won a really tough game on the road, which Tennessee hasn't done in a while. And you take it. But Jackson Arnold made this thing easier than it should have been for Tennessee.
Yeah, it was. I mean, all the anti-Jackson Arnold crew that we had early in the season certainly seemed to have their takes validated in this game, because there really isn't a whole lot of excuse for, especially like you said, that second fumble that was, the backwards incomplete pass ruled a fumble. Not debating that, just it's, if you're listening and trying to connect the dots for the second fumble, is that backwards incomplete fumble. But Venables saying after the game in a press conference that wasn't even the play that they were supposed to run out there is wild.
It was more that he made the read was bad. I don't think he was saying you don't throw that. You make that run all day instead of throwing it, I think is what he was saying more specifically.
Okay. I thought he was saying they had called a completely different play, but
not quite.
Either way, still just unacceptable performance. And it's unfortunate. I maybe want to touch on a little more of the offense before we really dig into, because I don't necessarily think that Arnold is terrible, right? We saw a lot of, obviously there's been stuff from him in practice, maybe he just can't put it together when the pressure's on, when the lights are on, kind of thing. But we know that he's not a bad player fundamentally. And I think there's a lot more maybe that we can be doing to support him. But yeah, it was an unacceptable performance, and I don't think it's a career-ending performance at OU, and it's certainly not a career-ending performance in college football with the way that the portal and everything else is. I've kind of long held that, unfortunately, if OU doesn't support Jackson Arnold properly, we might end up with a situation where he goes somewhere else, gets coached well, and then we have to see what he really could be. I do not think he's a Spencer Rattler situation. I really don't think he's a whiff as a player, and it was just a very, very unfortunate performance when we needed it the most. And yeah, three turnovers on your main guy, and then all three just being egregiously unacceptable. Is a tough pill to swallow in such an immense game, especially when the defense came out and did so much. I mean, those opening series when Tennessee is coming in with their scripted stuff and our defensive performance early on and our defensive performance through the first couple of quarters when the game was close, and you can't make the argument that they were backing off, was very, very, very good. But part of having an excellent defense is an offense that can keep them off the field. If this game wasn't in prime time, I think it would have gotten Tennessee another 10 points at least. Because at one point, Bobby, I know you were at the game, so you didn't feel this as much maybe, but there were so many commercial breaks for the first half of this game. It was absolutely insane, and it was the only thing giving our defense a rest. If we did not have this prime time slot, they want to run 3 minutes of commercials for every minute and a half of gameplay, our defense would have had no rest. If this was on ESPN Plus, we would have been cooked.
Yeah, no, I mean, I don't think you're wrong at all. The defense had no time out there. They were all the way out there because the offense couldn't do anything. Either they turned it over immediately or, went 3 and out. And, I will say with Jackson, I do think he is a talent. You've seen it with the throws. It's the decision-making that's just not there yet. He's not seeing the field correctly. His reads are a little off and his confidence is shot. And I got to say, I'm concerned. I don't know if we'll see him. I don't know what he'll like. He's going to have to dig deep and find a way to perform, for one. But two, if you're Oklahoma, what scenario do you bring him out there and not put in Michael Hawkins Jr.? Because I don't trust Jackson Arnold at Jordan Hare. I certainly don't trust him at OU Texas in the Cotton Bowl. And I don't know. We need to see a total 180 mentality or like mental shift. And for the coaching staff, obviously you would need to see it, in the facility, at practice, all of that. But it just feels like, I don't know. It just feels like it's kind of over. And I'm really bummed out about it because OU has obviously put a lot into it. Obviously kind of not ran off Dylan Gabriel, but didn't exactly fight to keep Dylan Gabriel and Norman because of Jackson Arnold. And I mean, he was one of the anchor pieces to this offense when Venables took over. He was like the first guy that Jeff Lebby talked to after hanging up the phone to let Ole Miss know he was leaving. He went in, talked to Jackson Arnold, and got him as his quarterback. And to see it fall apart 4 games in is incredibly frustrating.
Yeah.
Do you think they should have pulled him? Do you think that was the right move to pull him when they did?
Yeah. So I have a quick bit there. One on I know the runoff Dylan Gabriel thing has been a big talking point, but I don't think there's a situation where realistically OU retains him. I don't think there's any situation where you look at another year at OU being better for his draft stock or his brands. And then we weren't going to outbid Oregon, right? The second that Oregon wanted him, the Phil Knight's unlimited NIL thing and everything else, like that's a good. I have my little segments and bits on Dylan Gabriel, but that's where he belongs. That's the best spot for him, and I think he would have seen that. He's not from Oklahoma. He didn't, have some big passion for here like Baker Mayfield or anything else, right? He lived by the portal. You die by the portal, and we got him in, and we got some excellent years out of him, and excellent, the one Red River he got to play in an all-time game for OU, but that's the right spot for him. I don't think there's anything I don't think that's a fair criticism of our staff that I've seen from people. Because it's just, I don't think realistically we retain him. The second Oregon shows up, offers, 7 figures and, a chance to revamp, a chance to play in a different league and with a different staff that they got Bo Nix into the league. That's a pretty compelling, offer.
It's absolutely the right move. Still, I know it's not popular because Arnold did not look good. And Gabriel's look fine, but like Gabriel would struggle in this situation with no line and no receivers. Gabriel would absolutely be having some of the same issues.
He wouldn't have won this game for us, I don't think.
He wouldn't have been. I don't think he probably would have been enough to win the game. I don't think there's anything either. Well, I think it would be closer. I don't think he would have won the game.
We would have seen a very different second half.
Yeah, I think we would have seen. I think we would have seen a little bit of a closer game, but I mean, it's hard to tell because we've seen bad Dylan Gabriel games, and the type of games where he is bad are the type of games that like Tennessee would be throwing at him. So, and you can't go back and like you said, butterfly effect. Josh Heupel's offense looks totally different in the second half if Dylan Gabriel's in and it's closer. And who could you even tell? And that's even if it is close, But I don't know. I think Jackson Arnold definitely showed a lot of lack of experience there, and I don't know if I see a reality where everything turns around and gets better for him. To me, I imagine him and Jeff Lebby have been texting already. So him to Mississippi State feels like that just makes a lot of sense in a lot of ways, but we'll see. Hopefully he can turn it around and all of that. I just realistically, I've seen enough football to know that it's hard to come back from this mentally. Let's talk about.
I think real quick though, I do want to answer the original question you asked me of is it time to fully move on to Hawkins? Obviously, that's a super super tough decision and situation, and I kind of touched on the Caleb Williams, Spencer Rattler thing, a few minutes ago, and maybe you could even think about a Blake Bell, Trevor Knight maybe is a better comparison here, or the Baker Kyler thing. But I think that one thing that certainly you have to consider, and I haven't heard anyone else really mention this in the media, is that the quarterback is the leader of your team. Maybe a little bit less in college than it is in the NFL, because you can have guys in other positions that can really take that up. But certainly the defense has to know, even if they're not voicing it, even if they're still supportive of everyone, the defense has to know how well they performed. 23 points for that Tennessee offense, because obviously they had 2 on a safety, might legitimately be the season low for the regular season for this Tennessee offense. I don't think that's a wild take. I'm not trying to hype up OU. There's some that we'll get into when we talk about our defensive performance, how Tennessee contributed to that. But I think the defense has to know how well they performed. And they saw the same things that we did, that the offense, and in particular one guy, shot their performance in the foot. Every time they had those 2 massive turnovers that could have legitimately gained us the lead, swung momentum in our favor, they brought the Sooner magic. They brought, a legitimate top 10 performance in the nation on the defense and the offense, and in particular one guy, because obviously a ton of injuries, a ton of we even lost our best receiver season to date. Tatum showed promise and then was immediately injured. Nick Anderson, probably was never ready to play, but, went out there and then, of course, re-aggravated his injury. But they have to know. And that's got to be in the back of their minds and eating at them. And then at the same time, they also saw exactly what we saw from Hawkins. And, he didn't come in and do a Caleb Williams Red River and win the game from a massive deficit. But they saw a guy who was willing to put it all on the line, 110%, do everything that he could in his power. And, obviously they see different things in practice and everything else, but the mentality was different. And obviously Hawkins it was a house money situation when he came in, and he doesn't have the pressure and the weight of the season that Jackson Arnold has had so far in the bowl game that Jackson Arnold had last year. But it's got to be in the back of everyone's minds that this guy, everything that we did, every time we put it all out on the line, this guy is just inept and threw it away. And then this other guy came in and put in at a minimum the same amount of effort and same amount of fight that we did. So I think that's something that seriously has to be considered when it comes to team morale in general.
Yeah, no, I mean, I agree. And he clearly has that passion, that fire, that little Sam Bradford-esque flip at the goal line, very much reminiscent of some just dudes who just go all the way out. And that's not to put down Jackson Arnold or say he doesn't care. I'm not saying that.
Yeah.
It's that this Hawkins guy has an enormous amount of heart for a freshman, and it's something that I'm currently on Team Hawkins here. I think most people are, and I think I don't know. He has the stuff. He is the like the light at the end of the tunnel. Like this guy could be really damn good. He still had a lot of similar issues. Like he was getting just pulverized by Tennessee, who actually, if you actually look at the rate of them blitzing, they blitzed him more than they blitzed Arnold, which is kind of crazy. But yeah, it's I will say overall, Hawkins, I liked him. He looked like he had a really like some really good chemistry with some of those guys out there too. Like Petaway, I thought looked really good with him, you know. So maybe him having some reps with some of those younger guys will help because we kind of need some more to get some youth involved in the offense at this rate. But I think overall he's not the magic bullet to fix the offense, but I think he helps. And let's talk a little bit about some more offensive issues. I thought the line was not great again. Obviously, a very difficult draw opponent-wise with Tennessee, but it's not going to get easier. The SEC is packed full of tough D-lines, and it just didn't cut it. And it's more we can't even really look at it as a week-to-week thing because I don't know where the improvement comes. It's a macro Bill Bedenbaugh issue that he did not provide or did not build an offensive line through recruiting and the portal that can hold up at an SEC level. That's just where it's at. And he's got to be better. He's got to be better, or it's time to retire and head back up to Grand Lake, buddy. But I don't know.
Yeah, 3 sacks and 11 tackles for loss is pretty rough, even including the caliber of opponent that we were facing. I don't know. Certainly it could have been worse from the O-line. At least we're not seeing egregious discipline issues or things like that. There were definitely some very questionable snaps.
They did fix the discipline. You're right.
Yeah. So I am seeing trending in the proper direction from the line, at least. Hawkins' first snap being messed up, obviously bad omen. And there were some other snap issues here and there, but I don't know. I mean, it to me, a lot of this stuff goes back into coaching and maybe a lot of issues on the offensive staff. I mean, same thing with the running backs. We'll get into that, but how we got into this situation where obviously a lot of that can be pinned on the O-line as well, but how we got into this situation where like what the heck is going on with that room and recruiting as well. Because it certainly doesn't seem to be trending in the proper direction.
I gotta say, I think Luttrell and them really like the game plan really did not help out the deficiencies, because you can't. It's foolish and delusional to think that you can run inside zone, continue to run just right at the heart of this just mountain of a defense. Like you could visually see just how big these dudes were. Like it was and I sit pretty damn far up over in my section. Like I'm in that crappy west upper deck, which or is it east upper deck? I can't remember. No, yeah, the west upper deck.
Mm-hmm.
Speaking of crappy, the water main broke, so all of the bathrooms were down. So that was very indicative of OU's game. That wasn't great at all. But you could just tell that the D-line was big. So stop running it inside. Whenever we bounced outside a little bit, like Javonte Barnes, his really big run that ended in that massive hit that all the Tennessee fans are pumped about, which is always kind of funny whenever you're like, oh, what a hit. It's a 15-yard gain, but sure. They just abandoned going to the outside run, which I thought was bad. Running back's not great again. It's going to be an issue all season long, especially if Taylor Tatum can't get healthy.
Yeah, that was I don't know. It's crazy, and I think I've been holding off as long as I possibly can. But Bobby, you mentioned the name first, so I'll go ahead and touch on it a little bit. But Seth Luttrell, here is my, like, this to me is just wild. Like, maybe the craziest thing I've heard about this game, period, was I don't think, and let me know if you agree with me here, Bobby, but I didn't see any new problems on the offense. Like, we expected everything that we saw. Poor play by Jackson Arnold, maybe not to the extent that we saw. Poor offensive line, non-existent running backs, and then, just injury-riddled receiver room that even when they do good, Arnold doesn't see them open. Like Burks on that interception was wide open, maybe for a touchdown. And it's just ignored. And then in the post-game press conference, Seth Luttrell, our offensive coordinator, said that there's a lot of easily fixable issues with the offense, which doesn't make any sense to me because none of them are new. We've all seen them from week 1, even against Temple. Obviously, we put up a lot of points, but there were a lot of issues that we all saw, and it's all the same issues. So if they're easily fixable, why aren't they fixed? And they're not trending in the right direction either. Arnold is not, obviously, I think he regressed a little bit. It's our best opponent so far for sure, but all 3 of his turnovers, I can maybe excuse the first fumble because sometimes that just happens. I think maybe we just shouldn't be trying to power run him, but we truly didn't have any other options. But the other 2 turnovers would be turnovers against anyone in the nation. That interception was insane. It was just a terrible, terrible play. And that backwards, I'm going to make the wrong read and whatever the heck that was, is a turnover against anyone else in the nation. And I don't know. I think ultimately, if I were to replace one person on this offense, it would be Seth Luttrell for sure, because I just don't see, he hasn't been there long for sure, but I just don't see anything that is even a light at the end of the tunnel or a glimmer of hope there. And then I look at his resume and I don't really see any like specific reasoning beyond just he has a connection to OU that he's even here. So it's very questionable to me, especially since he is the quarterback coach as well. And it's just,
I'm kind of with you. That performance was one of the worst we've seen on Owen Field ever. John Blake-ish. Good friend of the pod, Brady Trantham, had a great tweet where he said, everyone keeps comparing this to John Blake, but at least John Blake's offense could have created some. I believe, at least this offensive line could block for DeMond Parker, which it's a damn good point. Like, this offense is not very good, and I think a lot of it is Luttrell's fault. And I'm not going to break out the F word yet, but my fingers on the button. My fingers on the button that this feels like an extended interim situation, and Venables made a very I don't want to say lazy, but overly conservative hire, going with someone who's an OU alum that's in the building. It did not leave much to be desired. So I don't think a reevaluation is off the table. I mean, because that's just not going to cut it. I mean, we'll see. He has time to improve, but it better start improving because it has not done anything. And like you said, Ty, you're like, oh, everything's fixable. Well, what Venables said in the post-game presser, he said, I believe, I'm so tired of seeing us make the same damn mistakes every time, or something to that. Don't quote me on that.
yeah.
It's just like the same issues every single week, and it does not change. And I don't know. Maybe it's just not working.
Well, and I think there's some nuance to it, but I constantly go back to that because to me, that's the one obvious piece, because we know that Coach Bedenbaugh's coaching isn't necessarily, or maybe he's mailed it in or whatever, and then people, but he's been excellent before. He's produced so many. What is it, like half the Chiefs line in the NFL right now is from OU and from Coach Bedenbaugh, and just he does know how to recruit. He does know how to perform. He does know how to, be the best O-line coach in the nation. He's received awards for it. His lines have received awards for it. You've seen it in first-round draft picks that are excellent in the NFL. So same with DeMarco Murray to some extent. We've seen great coaching, great recruiting from DeMarco Murray as well. Obviously coaches the backs. If we have any non-OU fans listening that are just kind of recognizing the name. But to me, Luttrell seems to be the kind of the obvious piece. And it does go to Venables to some extent, because that's what Nick Saban did amazing at Bama, is he found talent within the coaches that he hired, and he was able to develop coaches. I mean, look at all the coaches across college football right now that are in his coaching tree and that are performing excellently. He didn't necessarily like that the guy at Ole Miss, but point to him, point to Kirby Smart, point to really a ton of people. But I don't know. It seems to me that there's some sort of cultural issues on the staff that I don't know. You got to figure something out. But at the same time, I think for everyone that's kind of raising pitchforks and torches at Venables as well, is he's done an outstanding job with the defense. And if anything, maybe just needs to zoom out a little bit to the head coach perspective and be a little less zoomed into the defense, because I think right now it's almost and if we've seen the comparisons to the Lincoln Riley teams, but it's almost a reverse Lincoln Riley situation where you have a head coach who's really just a amazing coordinator for one side of the ball, and then the other side is just neglected. If we could just figure out a competent offensive coordinator to bring in that's going to be here for a while and can string together, a top 50 offense is all we're asking for, that just doesn't turn the ball over. Or if we could just bring in someone from a service academy to implement the triple option, and just our offense is just geared around time of possession to give the defense a rest. Because it works.
Switzer for OC.
Yeah, maybe a wishbone or something, but I don't know. I think it is a little too soon to tell, especially with all the injuries. We don't want to be hasty with anything, but I think that seat is certainly getting hot, or should be real soon.
And with Beatonbow, for me, it's just a matter of can he adapt to the modern college football with NIL and the portal and all of the crazy stuff we have going on right now? That's where the issues have propped up, and we'll see. But let's move on to that defense, because here's the thing. We're not game ball Michael Hawkins. Good job. Way to go, guy. I think we could just agree with that. The defense, though, it really ticks me off, because this is that was one of the most inspired performances I've ever seen an OU defense put out there. It was physical, aggressive, smart, just outside of two blown chunk plays. The Brew McCoy long bomb, and then obviously the 66-yard touchdown. It was just locked down, a solid performance, I think, across the board. Obviously, the first half is what you really, really want to focus on, because I do think Heupel did want to go, and chew clock, because that was the smart move. Because honestly, if you try to air it out, that's risky. That's how you get turnovers. That's how you get Nico hit a little bit more. And, if you go 3 and out, you just punt it to the other guys who aren't going to do anything. I don't think it was really, I think it was just a really smart strategic decision. Because OU was that good on defense. You don't want to flip it over and get the ball in their hand, so you play conservative. But I thought let's just start with this. I thought the run defense was excellent in this. Dylan Sampson and Deshaun Bishop, both very, very solid backs for Tennessee. I thought, even though Sampson had a 92 yards, came on 24 carries. Bishop had 16 carries for 65. They were pounding the rock, short yardage. We're not game breakers in any sense, but OU did a really good job shutting that down and kind of making Tennessee a little one-dimensional in some ways, whenever it was close.
Yeah, no, and you can see it. I watched a few film breakdowns and stuff, and the way we were playing our safeties and everything else was kind of what we had speculated on pregame as one of our ways that we could maybe deal with this Tennessee offense was to force it to be one-dimensional, to force Nico to win the game on his own accord in the air, and then to just trust that our offense would be able to put up points. The big chunk plays bothered me at the time, but I knew this before, and in thinking about it after, this Tennessee team in offense, especially as they continue to develop and they continue to develop their playbook and figure stuff out, is probably, I don't think it's a stretch to say they probably might be. They're certainly in contention for best offense in the country, and I think they're the most explosive in the country. No one is ever going to have zero explosive plays from this offense. I don't care if it's Georgia. I don't care if it's take your pick of any Bama defense of the past couple decades or anyone else's. The Tennessee team is always going to have a few chunk plays like that. That's just the nature of college football. So those don't necessarily bother me too much. The receivers being huge and just absolutely bullying Woody Washington with a stiff arm on one of those where it should have been maybe 10, 15 yards shorter than it ended up being that's kind of tough to see, but that stuff kind of happens. And our defense was able to perform. If you want to make all the arguments that you want about the second half, which I don't necessarily disagree with as we get into that more, but when Tennessee had their foot on the gas and they clearly were trying to score and the game was close, the defense still performs very, very good. And obviously there's adaptations during the game and adjustments and everything else, but it truly is a shame to see a performance like that wasted, because as OU fans, that's not the norm, right? That's maybe the best defensive performance we've seen from an OU team. Just fundamentally, we've had lucky performances before, and of course we've had shutouts, but that's probably the most fundamental defensive performance we've seen from an OU team in like 20 years. And it's just a shame to see that go to waste this season, because I think we'll have better ones this year as well, or we'll have better scores, outcomes the rest of the year, hopefully. But if we put up like the same score against Auburn, then that's going to be both very confusing and also very alarming, but mostly confusing.
Yeah, you hope to not lose a 25-15 score against Auburn. I don't know. This feels very scoregami-ish. I don't know. 25-15 is a weird-ass score. And I will say, the OU defense, that's kind of one of the reasons why I'm so frustrated. When OU usually loses a game, like their first game or any game, because we're used to this in the Big 12, it happens here and there. It's like, well, they didn't show up. They showed up flat against a 22-ranked Kansas State team or an unranked Iowa State or whoever, blah, blah, blah. And it was disappointing. This is the number 6 team in the country. I believe number 4, or no, I think they're number 5 in the AP right
should
now.
Should probably be higher, really.
They should be higher.
Yeah.
This is one of the best teams in college football. This is a college football playoff team. They're going to make the college football playoff. Book it already. I'm going to go ahead and say that right now. Tennessee is going to be in the college football playoff. And I'm not trying to be like, oh, let's look at the silver lining, blah, blah, blah. But, this was a good football team, and OU played them pretty tight. I know the game, it was not a 10-point ball game. Tennessee controlled the football game, but I think there are flaws. I don't think this is like a total disaster. Let's burn everything down, because I think the offense or the defense is in a really, really good spot. And I think there are ways to improve. I'm not trying to pump sunshine. I'm just saying this isn't the most embarrassing loss we've seen in OU history. It was untimely. It was frustrating, but I think the defense was something to be, really proud of. And, I just wish you could go back in time and find a way to put the 2018 OU offense and this defense together. And there you go. You have the best college football team ever.
Can I just say, get ready to clip this one, because this is going to be very clippable.
Oh, no.
As an OU fan, now that I've experienced both sides, I would so much rather have an amazing offense and just the worst defense in the country, those games were so much more fun to watch. Like, the Baker Kyle or the Baker Mahomes, OU Texas Tech games, or obviously it wasn't us, but that A&M LSU game that broke all the records, and just an absolute shootout where you're just not even attempting to stop the other team from scoring, and you're just going out and scoring in 6 or less plays, was so much more fun to watch than just the only trick we have being our defense is just, I'm not built for it. I'm not used to it. And I would so much rather be able to go toe to toe with any offense in the nation and then just have a defense that gives up, 50 points to Iowa State or something, which, those have been cleaned up in retrospect thanks to Purdy being good in the NFL and stuff like that. But I don't know. I don't enjoy this. I'm not complaining about having a great defense, but if you're talking about we got to max out the slider one way and then just be 0 to 100 or 100 to 0, give me 100 offense. That's so much more fun to watch than the because the defense can't be like unbreakable. It's just not realistic in college football. I'd much rather be like, we're going to score every time we touch the ball. And then also you're going to score every time you touch the ball. So let's just see what happens.
I'm kind of with you in a weird way. I just want a normal football team that's like kind of balanced, that's not, one way or the other. Because this is not fun. This sucked. I don't like being red Iowa. I'd rather be whatever the hell the USC thing was, or the Lincoln Riley, off OU team was. The answer is you have to find a middle ground. You have to, but yeah, OU's offense has to figure it out because that ain't cutting it. Yeah, long term, absolutely, it ain't cutting it. By the way, okay, so I want to address a couple comments. Someone brought up the idea of the field being messed up. It has been a problem all year. We've recently switched head greenskeepers recently. Previous guy was great. New guy, I don't know. I'm sure he's doing his best, but he needs to figure it out because this has been Owen Field has never had an issue like this, and it's been crap, and it's unfortunate. Ty, I know you mentioned that a little bit on your post-game space.
Yeah, there's been a lot of questions about that. And this is my personal conspiracy, but like you said, I don't know if it's greenskeeper or groundskeeper. It's certainly one of those.
I think it's groundskeeper.
Yeah, a turnover in that position. And then last week, the field was just covered with dirt and dead grass. It looked terrible, like dead grass clippings all over it, like patches of dirt. And it definitely seemed like there was an extreme overcorrection because we've not seen this field like it is. And I know Tennessee fans were complaining about it, but I think unfortunately, looking back, probably contributed to some injuries on the OU side as well. And I would almost argue that OU had much more to complain about with the field than Tennessee did because of our guys that got hurt. And I want to be cautious with that, right? Because you never know. But I think that certainly could have been a contributing factor to some of those injuries. And then, it represents us and it looks terrible on us. First intro to the SEC, one of the most viewed games this year. And a lot of people were seeing the same stuff. It was just weird. And that's it's certainly not the norm. So hopefully, just another thing we get figured out. It would not surprise me if groundskeeping is under Seth Luttrell's umbrella of responsibilities, seeing how it has been these past couple of weeks.
Oh, that's hilarious. Yeah, it's not good. And, honestly, the Kendall Dolby, by the way, since we're talking about defense, Kendall Dolby injury is just heartbreaking across the board. He's been playing his ass off. Hell of a player, a senior. And seeing him hurt, I haven't seen it, and I'm not going to see it. I was up in the stands, but from what I've heard, it's grisly. Obviously, the scenes were heartbreaking, and just really hope he makes a good recovery there because that's just awful stuff. And OU's going to miss him bad. So, yeah. Anyways, let's move on from the grass to more defensive talk. Did any defensive player really stand out to you, Ty? Just off the top of your head?
So here's it sounds kind of like a cop-out answer, but I think no, and the nuance to that is that that's good, right? Like as much as I love those games where we have Danny Stutzman leading tackles and like quadrupling everyone else's tackles, that's not necessarily a great indicator of a great defense. That's a great indicator of you have an All-American on your defense who's able to be everywhere and do everything. Some of those Kenneth Murray performances back in the Alex Grinch era would come to mind. This one, obviously, Robert Spears-Jennings once again had a very, very good game. I think he led us in tackles. Yeah, 13 total, 7 solo.
He was great.
So
fumble.
Yeah, he led us in tackles, and kind of a career low performance from Danny Stutzman, surprisingly. And I think he was out a few snaps, so there might be some stuff to take a look at there. But I think fundamentally a very, very solid performance from this defense. Every mistake that was made was, I think, more or less, I'm kind of forgetting any personal fouls maybe that we had, but no like egregious mistakes that just cannot be forgiven. Like I said, this is the most explosive offense in the country. So you're going to give up some chunk plays in the air. I think Nico, very realistically, especially with Texas makes the wrong decision at quarterback here, could be the Heisman front runner as we get into week 6 or 7, certainly with the storylines that he's going to have going on in this season. So I'm not at all surprised that we gave up what we did, and we were able to sell out our safeties to make them one-dimensional and to shut down the run. And whatever you want to say about their, you say, oh, they turned it off in the second half. I can see that argument for turning off the air attack a little bit, but they still ran it a whole lot, and they still didn't really produce as much as I thought they would really going into this game. So very, very solid defensive performance, regardless of what you have to say about Tennessee's play calling and Heupel's clear lack of desire to come in and try to embarrass anyone or run up the score on OU. I mean, that's another talking point I think we can get into here in a second. But really, really solid performance from this defense. Even if you just want to look at the first 2 quarters, which are maybe more indicative of everything. So,
yeah, no, I mean, I thought it was great. Second half, you can't control what Tennessee's offense is doing. You can't be like, oh, throw the ball more, keep bringing it on, So it was the right move for Tennessee. Very, very smart, game management to not like keep throwing the ball. That's, there's that old quote, when you throw the ball, 3 things can happen and 2 of them are bad. So running the rock with 2 really reliable running backs, that was smart because yeah, they were right. The offense can't do anything. So yeah, that's fine.
And I didn't have the stat pulled up. Dylan Sampson, who again might very legitimately be a top. I mean, it's not crazy to say he's a top 15 running back in the nation right now. Could very easily
way
be
better than 15 for sure.
No, could very easily be top 5 in the nation right now. We just kind of haven't seen yet. But 24 carries for 92 yards. That's a very, very impressive stat line for this OU defense with a running back of his caliber, with a line of their caliber. And again, if you want to say, oh, Tennessee turned their foot off the gas, which I don't necessarily disagree with, they couldn't steer away from running the ball. And, Bishop, their number 2 running back, 16 for 65, average of 4.1. Sampson just kind of below that because he carried the rock more at that 3.8 average is very, very solid for the caliber of line and for the caliber of backs that those guys are. Again, might actually be seeing season lows from both of them, at least when we talk about the regular season. So, really, really, really solid performance from the defense.
Yeah, no, they earned all 92 of those yards. Or Sampson did, and obviously Bishop with his 65. So, Tennessee did have some injuries on the O-line. That's fine. I don't know. I think the defense was just good. That's just kind of how it is. Nobody's making excuses for OU's offensive line, I'll tell you that. So, anyway, no, I thought there was stuff to be happy with on that. Game ball, Robert Spears-Jennings, I think feels pretty unanimous on that one.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so. I think you have to. So
yeah. All right, let's move to kind of some concluding points. A little bit different from what we usually do here on the show, but we got a lot more commenters than usual. So I will say, just looking through here, Burnside said, Vol fan, I think if they swap to the freshman quarterback and have a semi-competent offense to match that defense, they'll be fairly good. 9-3 or 8-4, maybe something to build from next year. So here's the thing. I'd cut off my left foot for 9-3, 9-8. I'm not saying I will if we go 9-4 or 9-8. I'm just saying, or 9-3 or not. Sorry, 9-3 or 8-4 would be just incredible. Like 9-3 is a playoff that OU is in the playoff. They're not making the playoff, but God, I hope so. 8-4 is a good year. I think that's a little optimistic. I appreciate the kind words, Burnside, but no, I think yeah, I mean, I think that'd be great, but it's a tough schedule. I think if OU had Missouri scheduled, they'd be a lot better off, but we keep playing these tough ass teams. So.
Or Texas's schedule.
Yeah, or Texas's. Just flop the schedules and it's a totally different situation. God, brutal. Yeah. So let's talk about Heupel. I thought he was great. I thought it was pretty emotional and pretty cool seeing how much this win meant to him. He did get a tribute before the game. I'm sure you saw. Put up a quick little, video like thing on the video board. Announced welcome back, Josh Heupel. He patted his chest, patted his heart. So, I thought that was cool. Pretty special moment. I thought he had a hell of a game. So Heupel, damn good head coach.
A very deserved standing ovation and welcome back to Norman. Obviously not the first time he's been in Norman since, but super cool to see. And then really good performance. I think one thing to touch on is I think a lot of Tennessee fans were actually surprised a little bit by his love for OU that manifested a little bit in his game plan. And I think there was three pieces to that. Really is one, no reason to risk injuries for people if you feel that you really have the game in hand, which even when they were up by like 7, why wouldn't you feel that way based on our offensive performance? And then immediately seeing Burks, Tatum, and then Nick Anderson go out and seeing, okay, the 3 weapons that they maybe had are now gone, and Jackson Arnold is continuing to just, I don't know. Maybe he had a bunch of money on Tennessee because that was just a wild performance. He may have had his skills stolen by the Monstars, perhaps. So we might find out that in another dimension, there's just some little gremlins that are playing a football game against Tom Brady or something like that, and they've stolen Jackson Arnold's skills. But
for the record, if you look at the original Monstars in the Space Jam, one of the guys they picked was Sean Bradley. So if you're saying that's a weird pick, the Monstars have a chance. Like they always have one weird one. So
all they saw was that he was a 5-star recruit.
they read the message boards and heard
and they could get to Oklahoma. They came up through the cracks in the soil from fracking, so they made it up to Jackson Arnold. They couldn't steal Nico because he's on Rocky Top. The rocks of Tennessee are hard to dig through to get to Nico.
Strangers ain't come down from Rocky Top, Ty. I reckon they never will.
Exactly. Yeah, that's talking about the Monstars specifically. But Heupel clearly had no desire to embarrass OU or to try to run up the score, and he clearly was not angry. I think realistically, right, his anger at OU, if he does harbor any, why would it be at the university and not 1 or 2 specific individuals? Obviously don't want to speak for him, but I think that was very plain to see in this game. You could see it in his eyes. It was not how he looks and how he talks pre-game before big games. Obviously he was focused, but you could see a lot of emotion there before and after. And that was really, really cool to see. And the final piece is people talk about this talking point a lot in college football, but I believe in it with Josh Heupel is he didn't want to show everything, which they're definitely on a playoff run, potentially on a championship run, depending on, Georgia versus the Georgia State Patrol and some other factors. But Josh Heupel comes from he can be a little troll. He can be a little wily. You see it in his comments, you see it in his press conferences and everything else. And then you got to think about you're talking about a guy who was influenced by Mike Leach a little bit. And Mike Leach loved those, the infamous fake game plan drop before Red River and everything else, that Heupel just had these exposures to all these little troll moments and everything else that he grew up with and I think really resonates with. And I think he's the same way. I think he had a lot of stuff in his back pocket, and you don't want to show that on tape for Georgia. You don't want to show that on tape for Texas potentially. You don't want to show that on tape for, I guess, Ohio State maybe. We'll talk about the other conferences when we get to the weekend spread, but it's clearly the SEC show this year when it comes to the national stage. But he clearly kept himself in his back pocket, and like we talked about, and this is a good sort of capping off point, I guess, is like we talked about, OU and Jackson Arnold and our offense had the chance to maybe make him pull some of those out of his back pocket, maybe stay on the gas a little bit, maybe have to risk Nico a little bit more than he did. If we could have capitalized on some stuff early and at least made it a competitive game, or a game where they're on their back foot and having to work against momentum and having to really fight for some stuff. But that's, unfortunately for us, that's just not the game we saw. And it was really cool, though, to see Heupel's return and to see the emotion that he had there and to see the reaction that he got from the crowd, the thanks that he got formally from the university and recognition, and the respect that he got afterwards was really, really cool to see from both fan bases and in person and everything else. So that was awesome.
Yeah, it was. And I will say, one of the funnier moments in a game that was not very funny to me, walking out of the stadium, I passed by the stadium Lost and Found, and I kid you not, hanging on the wall of the stadium Lost and Found is a picture of Josh Heupel when he was playing at OU, which honestly, definitely not intentional. I'm sure. It looks like it's probably been there. Like if you know anything about Memorial Stadium, it is a bit of an old thing. Definitely looks like it hasn't been touched since the year 2000. But yeah, Josh Heupel in the Lost and Found department, very funny. But no, Tennessee, they got a damn good one for sure. Yeah. Credit to the Vols. Credit to the Vols. And, I will say, just putting a definitive close on this chapter of everything, it's been a very interesting, I would say, game week, but the Vol fans found us like 10 days before. But, the passion online, the passion in person, I thought Tennessee fans were great. Like the ones in real life were fantastic. Our friends from Channel TN, when we did the show last week with them, I thought they were great. And, Tennessee's fan base the definition of a tortured fan base for the past several decades. And, I get the passion, I get letting it all out. And, I hope everyone who came to Norman, came to Oklahoma City, did have a good time, did enjoy the hospitality. But very cool fan base, clearly has the passion of an OU. They were all over the place, packed out in, at Owen Field. So much credit to Vol fans. It was quite the welcome to the SEC, to say the least.
Yeah, I agree. It was super, super cool fan base, super cool. I think they have a bright future ahead of them this season, which is always good. It's much more palatable to lose to a team who you could see holding up the national championship trophy at the end of the season than it is to lose to a rival like Texas or someone like Kansas or Iowa State or something like that. So as much as the Vols fans want to point at us for losses, we've had plenty of losses in the past, and never once have they been considered a quality loss. So we're very excited to now get to leverage quality losses like our loss to Tennessee as potential positives for this program going forward. This is the kind of thing you bring up in an interview when they ask what your biggest weakness is. You say, oh, well, I lost by 10 points to Tennessee, and I held them to, probably their season low of points. That's my biggest weakness, and that gets us into the playoff with 4 losses or something like that because we're in the SEC now. So
there you go. I mean, that's and, honestly, that probably might be one of Tennessee's lowest offensive outputs all season. Because Nico's going to tear it up. He looked damn good. That was a pretty good start. It was pretty solid. That's a solid quarterback right there for sure. But Tennessee, I think they'll go a long way. I'm excited to keep watching them. And Vol fans, we do a weekly pick show. Don't listen to the picks because we are apparently horrible at them now. But we will be talking Tennessee periodically throughout the season for big games. So make sure to stick with us if you want to. If not, totally understand. Just leave or keep trolling us, whatever you want to do. But
we'll be teaming up with them against Mizzou shortly.
Oh yeah, no, we should team up with them against Mizzou. It's deserved. It's deserved. We could use both of our powers together against Mizzou to just troll the hell out of them. It sounds good. But all right, well, closing that chapter, on to the next one. Oklahoma's first SEC road game against the Auburn Tigers. Hugh Freeze's boys. They're 2-2 overall, 0-1 in SEC play after a loss to Auburn. Not Auburn. They can't lose to themselves, but they try. After a loss to Arkansas at home. So troubling times are afoot with the Auburn Tigers. Ty, do you think you can get SEC win number 1 at Jordan-Hare?
I certainly think we can, but it's, anything can happen. But I think I am comfortable in our ability to actually pull through on this one.
Yeah. And I mean, I don't want to say must win because it's, we're 3-1. It's game 5. But it feels like you have to have this one if you're OU. Just given how tough this schedule is, how difficult, how bad Auburn's looked. They can't figure out a quarterback, it seems. Peyton Thorne obviously benched. The guy they had, I didn't get a good look at a lot of this Arkansas game, honestly. I haven't had time. I've been too busy gearing up for and recapping this Tennessee game. But I mean, the Auburn offense just does not look very good. So I don't know where they're going with it. I mean, I guess they did play more Peyton Thorne than Hank Brown, didn't they? Threw for 213, 2 touchdowns. Maybe, so I guess they might have benched Hank Brown. So I'll have to look into that. But it just seems like an Auburn team that is, going through a lot of struggle right now, which makes them dangerous. So I don't know. Hopefully OU can go. But also OU is going.
I love the idea that we'll beat them because their offense sucks and they just bench their starting quarterback.
This is going to be bad. This is going to be like a worse version of the I'm pretty sure Auburn played in a game that ended 3-2 at one point.
It wasn't too long ago. I mean, it was probably more than a decade ago, but I think it was Mississippi State. I remember that.
Yeah. Auburn, Mississippi State, the 3-2 game. It was at Starkville.
What year was that? Like 2012?
2008.
2008. Okay. A little farther than I thought, but the baseball score game. Talk about a scoregami there. But I think this one is must win. If we don't win this one, right, Maine obviously is the most beatable team going forward on our schedule. But if we don't win this one, our next most beatable team is LSU at home.
South Carolina.
LSU might have an intern head coach by the time we make it to Death Valley. So we'll see. If the message boards had their way,
I'd be feeling a lot better. But
if the message boards had their way, we would be facing Les Miles in Death Valley at the end of the season. So.
Oh Lord. Well, Thankfully, schools don't listen to idiots on the internet, or else Brent Venables would not be
know.
the head coach.
Yeah,
right
and then
now.
we'd be winless in the E SEC.
Yeah, that's true. There you go. So
If you think you
go
can do a
on.
better job, then why don't you? Well, I think I could have lost to Tennessee, so I think any one of
Fair
us could
enough.
have lost to Tennessee. So.
Yeah. So yeah, but got to get Auburn, and then you go into the bye week, figure something out against Texas, which looks as tough as ever. But as we know, anything can happen in that one.
They could play Quinn Ewers, and then it's a lock for us. But
oh my god, I love it. Let's go after the other UT now. Try to piss their fans off.
we've been doing that for years, though. And we know they have no reaction.
No, yeah, because they don't care.
We'll get
Most
Chris
Texas fans
on,
don't
and
care.
he'll be like, "Arch is pretty good." So
Well, now they probably care now because they're actually good. So now they might actually have people on the internet because they're good. But they've been a little checked out the past decade or so. But
like the Cicadias, they've just been dormant.
that's funny. Well, we'll do more of an in-depth Auburn, kind of preview a little bit on the weekend spread when we make those picks. I don't know. This is just a weird one because Hugh Freeze always he's slippery. He always finds his way to wiggle out of bad situations. I know I said the exact same thing last week against Auburn or against Arkansas, but this feels like a big one. I know the ticket prices were a lot higher for this one. Auburn fans are definitely a little bit more restless at this point, but OU's got to find a way to win. Simple as that. So interested to see if it'll be Hawkins, who will be back, who will be there. We'll talk about it. I don't know. We'll see how it goes. But
yeah,
Ty, any final thought? Go ahead.
Yeah, no, looking forward on Auburn, I can't necessarily. It's more of a vibe. There's a lot of nuance to this that I can't explain. But OU fans must be aware, because I know that most OU fans are not as aware of Hugh Freeze as maybe people that are exposed to the SEC might be. But Hugh Freeze is the most Mike Gundy coach that's not Mike Gundy that we're going to face. It's hard to explain, and I'm not saying Hugh Freeze is Mike Gundy or Mike Gundy is Hugh Freeze, but he is, I don't know, the essence that makes up both of them is the same, and y'all will see it as we see him more. But he is slippery like that. He's, like Mike Gundy, the little dog with a contract in his mouth that you're never going to get from him. Gundy actually maybe getting another $1 million thanks to Florida rumors, but he's very Gundy-esque, so you must watch out for him.
Oh yeah, no. The second Florida started slipping, both Florida teams started slipping. They're like, all right, heyday time for old Mikey. So I'm sure he'll probably try to get a re-up there, but. Yeah. So, all right. Well, that's all we got for this one. Thank you all so much for watching live on YouTube and listening via podcast, your favorite podcasting app. Looking forward to the remainder of the season. It's going to be a unique one, a tough one. We'll keep moving. But for me and Ty, this has been the Schooner Pod. We'll see y'all next time, unless you're the Tennessee fans that won't show up again, which is fair. That's fine. We'll see y'all next time. Boomer Sooner, everybody.